I was 20 when I married, young guy, and in 2006, I believe it was, my wife wanted a separation, and so that was difficult. Didn't want that, but I was willing to do whatever we needed to do, and unfortunately, after some time, she had decided that she wanted a divorce. And so, again, really hard, really difficult. And that divorce ended up lasting 6 years. It led to feeling depressed, anxiety, just intense sadness, just grieving, willing to do whatever I could do to try to make it work. So that was a tough one. And I didn't know anything about mental health, didn't know anything about counseling. As I was dealing with my depression, oftentimes a symbol of that is, or a symptom is isolation. So I felt alone, felt very isolated, and it was very, very hard. And so during that time, around 2000, I guess 2008, 2009 is when the economy kind of dropped, right? The car business pretty much went to a halt. And so my business got slow as well, being in the car business. And so dealing with depression, anxiety, the grief, and just this ugly divorce. And so as I was dealing with that and knew for sure that my relationship with my ex was final, it's just a matter of time, I did meet someone else, and we started dating, and she ended up moving in with me, and we were together for about 8-9 months or so. And during that time, she had mentioned to me that she was pregnant. And wow, was not planning on being a dad, but always wanted kids, but okay. I had started to notice over a period of weeks that something just seemed off. And basically, what I found out was that the previous boyfriend before me, she was starting to see again. And one of my buddies happened to see her meet with this guy. And so when I confronted her about it, found out that the child wasn't even mine, that it was this guy's, and she knew it all along. And basically I was being used because I could support this kid and support her. And as I reflect back now, dealing with the grief I was already going through, and then now this relationship, and thinking about being a dad and building a relationship with with her daughter, I think that really hit me hard. And so when that big breakup happened, when I got that news, I mean, I remember pulling it out of my shop and calling my connection and getting an 8-ball, which is 3 grams of, it's a good portion of Coke. And so, yeah. And so it went from every once in a while, if I'm with these folks, I might have a bump, go, have some drinks, to it was becoming a weekend thing, to when that happened, it was my way of coping. It was my way of numbing. And then with the car business going down, things slowing down, the divorce getting uglier, I remember it got to a point where I just didn't care. I was heading back to my friend's house where I was staying, and there was a random roadblock. Stopped, and they asked for my license, and because I had moved all my stuff out abruptly to let this family stay in my house and moving it into storage, I had misplaced my driver's license. It must have fallen out of my pocket, or it was somewhere in the boxes or bags or whatever. And so, I explained it to that officer, the sheriff, and I was like, I just moved and I cannot find it. I've been trying to find it, but I have a handgun permit. There's a gun in here, and I have that ID. And he said, well, that's not gonna be sufficient. I need your driver's license, but give me what you got. So I gave it to him. He said, you don't have your license. You have, and your license is suspended. I would like for you to pull your vehicle over and get out. And so hearing that, seeing his expression, being all that had happened kind of that month and that day all hit me at once, seeing those officers kind of looking at me kind of awkwardly and semi-surrounding the vehicle, it was the straw that broke the camel's back. I panicked, hit the pedal to the metal. Now in a Suburban, if I was in a Porsche, we'd have a movie. But a Suburban, it only will go so fast. But I took off. It ended up being about a 9-mile chase. I was able to get off on a side road, and I remember pulling up behind a community center, and I cut out my lights and was hoping that maybe I lost them. Well, they came out behind me. They got their vehicles stuck, and they got out of their vehicles and they pulled their weapons, and they all were yelling, "Get out of your vehicle, get out of your vehicle." Weapons drawn made me panic more. So I put my vehicle into 4-wheel drive and to see if I could get up that embankment. And when I started to move, they began to discharge their weapons. I panicked even more, and I was able to take off. So I went about 1/8 of a mile. By that time, it was starting to get dark. And I jumped out the vehicle. I grabbed my .45 and jumped out of the vehicle. There was a fence. I rolled underneath and lost my glasses as I rolled underneath. So I was like, everything's kind of blurry. But so there was a field and ran towards the trees. And there was one large tree that was kind of sticking out more than the others. So I got behind there and I just laid down on the floor, and it's cold. It's getting dark, and I'm laying there. I'm like, I guess this is it. Like, there's no way to get out of this. How am I gonna get out of this? Then I hear dogs in the woods behind me. And so I'm like, oh gosh, now they got the canines out, right? So I feel surrounded. And I'm like, well, I guess this is it. Maybe this is what it was. This is the end. I took the .45, I was laying on my stomach, and I pointed the gun at my temple. And again, this was not anything I had planned. And I said, well, I guess I don't see any other way out of this. Tired of being in pain. And I pulled the trigger and the gun jammed. I was like, crap. So I take the gun and I try to just unchamber the bullet to see what's wrong, and the gun discharges accidentally. And so when that happened, of course, all the noises, all the people, it got silent. And I'm like, oh no, now they think I'm shooting at them. This is not good. They're gonna start shooting at me now. So out of panic, I rechambered the gun. And I often say that this is the shot that saved my life, because I think if that initial shot, if that gun had not have jammed, I would not be here right now. But being that that second attempt was out of panic and out of a quick reaction, it changed the trajectory of the bullet. So instead of it being, right in the temple on the side, I quickly chambered and I shot here, and the bullet exited here. And so when that happened, I remember dropping to the ground. I was still conscious. I think I was kind of in and out of consciousness. I had about a 20% chance of survival initially. I had three, I guess at the time it was 2 surgeries. And once I was in the intensive care, ICU. And that 3rd day again, I woke up and didn't know where I was at, didn't know why I couldn't see, had no idea of what happened. Still had to deal with the depression, the anxiety, the loss, the grieving. But now I'm looking at, how do I do this as a blind person? I don't know what that means. Does that mean I have to live in a nursing home? Do I have to live with my parents the rest of my life at the age of 29? Total loss of independence. Still have to deal with the divorce. And now the legal ramifications, and finding out that, with what I had done with fleeing the scene, I was looking at 5 counts of aggravated assault against an officer, resisting arrest, all these charges. I was looking at 30 years in prison. How am I gonna be in prison as a blind person? So after about 3 weeks, I went home, and the sheriff's department said that I needed to turn myself in. And so my dad had explained to one of the Tennessee troopers that ended up at the scene later on my story. He apparently, felt pity for me and empathy, and he talked to the judge, and they allowed me to heal those next few months and put that to the side. I had to deal with the physical, I had to deal with the legal, and when I was in the hospital, they told me, you really need counseling. And so I did intensive outpatient for, I think, about 4 weeks, which then transitioned to a few days a week, and then transitioned to seeing a therapist one-on-one. One of the things that I know now, and I stress with my clients I work with, is that before I could go to school or learn a job or learn new skills, I had to get my brain healthy. So the therapy, the counseling helped prepare me and get me to a place back in my window of tolerance or my green zone to where I could start even seeing that there's another chapter, that this wasn't the end of the book, but the beginning of a new chapter. And who knows what that's gonna look like, but here we go. And then I remember one day thinking about, what have I been doing up to this point? I would always have someone come up to me, and I still remember this guy coming to me. I can visualize it even though I didn't see him, but I can see him coming to me and taking my hand, and he says, I want you to know that 3 times I was gonna kill myself, and I talked myself out of it. And I was about to be there at that place again, and that's why I'm here. He said, but hearing your story gives me a whole new perspective on life. And he said, you've changed me. Thank you. And so that scene hit me, and I was like, well, maybe that's what I need to do. If I can help one person avoid the mistakes that I made, if I can help someone, give them the resources that I didn't have, educate them, support them, then my second chance of life was worth it. And so one thing that I always tailored my learning in MTSU and at Vanderbilt was, how can I help other people that lack those resources also, people who may be going blind. or may be disabled, or they have a major adjustment in life. It may not even be a disability, but a major adjustment, and they're dealing with that grief and loss. What was cool was that Refuge was one of the places I wanted to intern at, and at that time didn't work out. But being stubborn and hard-headed like I am, I reached back out, and they hired me, and I've been here ever since. So it's 5 years as of March, and so that's between that and what I'm doing now is what I'd say has put me at Rocky Top, where I feel I'm where I need to be, where I'm making a difference, and I'm where God wants me to be in the second chance of life.